Well, good evening, body. I'm Tom Burrows, Commissioner at Large, District 2. Tonight, however, I will be acting as Mayor Pro Tem due to the unavailability of Mayor Garner. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that we have individuals attending remotely as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so that the public that is participating knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Please be sure you are speaking into a microphone to ensure your comments are heard and an accurate record is made. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please announce the meeting and call roll.
Good evening. You are hereby notified that a special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas is to be conducted in a hybrid format on Thursday, April 25th, 2024 at 6 p.m. for a legislative update in the fifth floor conference room of the Municipal Office Building, 701 North 7th Street, Kansas City, Kansas. Roll call. Hill.
Here.
Kane. Lopez.
Here.
Stites.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
Burns, we have an absence memo. Ramirez.
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight, we are here for an update from our legislative representative, Mr. Paul Davis. I'll ask our county administrator, Mr. David Johnston, if he has any opening remarks.
Well, as you're aware that the state legislative session of kind of officially wound down a couple of weeks ago, but today came back for veto, override, and state budget work for the next couple of days. It's a good time for us to get an update from our lobbyists to give us an idea of what transpired over the last 4 months, and will continue to work for us over the next year as we prepare for the next legislative session. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan House, who pretty much is our bridge to Paul to give some introductory remarks, and then Paul will then give his update.
All right. Thank you. Alan Howe, Assistant County Administrator. It's been a busy session and appreciate Mr. Davis, his work and the opportunities that I think he brought forward to the commission to testify on matters that came before the legislature on a variety of topics. So I think there was good involvement from commission and staff during this session, which you appreciated, and perhaps at a level that we hadn't necessarily done before. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you and give us the update.
Thank you very much. Delighted to see all of you and give you what I think is a very timely update on the legislative session. As was mentioned by the administrator, the legislature has returned to Topeka today and tomorrow. Primarily, budget committees are meeting the appropriators, so to speak, to work on some bills and also to be putting together the omnibus budget, which is sort of the last wave of the budget process, which will be considered during the wrap-up session. And then the full legislature will begin work again on Monday. And the question this time of year is always, how long are they going to be there? And it's hard to tell. As most of you probably know, tax issues have really been at the forefront during this session. The state has a $3 billion budget surplus, a position that the state has never been in before. And so the question has really not been whether or not they're going to cut taxes. It's what taxes are going to be cut and to what extent. And that is really where the disagreement lies between the governor and the legislature. If you've watched the news, which I'm sure you probably have in the last 24 hours, you probably saw that Governor Kelly has vetoed the latest tax bill that has been put on her desk. And the reasoning behind her veto is that the package is simply too large, and she is concerned about the long-term viability of the state general fund. And she, in turn, has introduced an alternative package for the legislature to consider. But before they are going to get to any type of other packages, there will be an attempt to override her veto. And there are some dynamics at play that was trying to think about this last night. I think the probably almost 25 years that I've been involved in the legislative process in some way, shape, or form, and Commissioner Burrows may want to opine on this. There's some dynamics at play that I've never seen before. The bill that the governor vetoed actually passed the House unanimously. I'm not sure I've ever seen a tax bill that has passed the House unanimously. And you have Democrats and Republicans that supported that, obviously, in the House. But then in the Senate, you have a split where the Democrats are more aligned with Governor Kelly. I think it's likely that an override attempt is probably going to be successful in the House, but the Senate is going to be the question mark of whether that is going to stay. The Democrats have 11 members in the Senate. They need 14 in order to be able to prevent the veto from being overridden. And so the governor will have to pick off 3 Republicans, which she's been able to do so far during this session on tax issues. But whether that's going to stay the same, we'll have to see. But what I really primarily wanted to talk about tonight is just the UG's legislative agenda and the items where we have seen action with regard to that agenda. And there's been quite a bit of action. We testified on 17 bills during this past session, and I wanted to especially thank those of you who have made the trip up to Topeka to testify or to talk with our local delegation or with other legislative leaders. It makes a big difference, really, when you're able to come up to Topeka and people see you there. So I want to just say again how much I appreciate that, and hopefully we can continue to lure more of you up to the legislature in 2025. But the first issue I wanted to address is Medicaid expansion, the issue that probably has gotten the most publicity next to the tax issue during the past session. There was a hearing that was held in both the House and the Senate. This is the first committee hearing that has been held in 4 years. I think there was into the hundreds of proponent testimony that was offered, and it was a standing room only crowd to say the least. But that neither of those bills moved forward. However, there has been a procedural motion that has been put in motion, I guess, procedural motion that's put in motion the last day of the regular session, which will cause the Senate to have a vote as to whether they're going to take up that issue. So there may be a vote in the Senate. Governor Kelly, as you are probably very aware, has been all over the state barnstorming to try to drum up support for Medicaid expansion. But I think it is going to be a tough sell, given that the legislative leadership on the Republican side has been pretty steadfast in their opposition. Under the issue of allowing flexible revenue sources, the earnings tax issue has come up a couple of times. Representative Oropeza introduced a bill this session. Senator Haley introduced a bill last session that received a hearing. Neither of these bills have moved forward. Really, the impediment out there is we need more advocates for this. We have, and I've talked extensively with Representative Oropeza and Senator Haley about other possibilities of other organizations or entities that may come to the table, and I certainly welcome any thoughts that any of you may have about others who may want to aid our efforts in that respect. The local ad valorem tax reduction fund, we had a lot of conversation about this when we met with the delegation. Commissioner Ramirez came over and testified on a bill. there were quite a few bills that were introduced dealing with the local ad valorem tax fund. There was a push primarily among Democrats to try to fund that. It hasn't been funded now for several decades. In turn, some Republican legislative leaders have decided to take a different approach, and that is that they would like to get rid of the local ad valorem tax reduction fund completely. And the bill that Governor Kelly vetoed did contain a provision that would eliminate LAVTRF. And so if her veto is overridden, LAVTRF will be a thing of the past. There are some discussions ongoing about perhaps looking at an alternative replacement for LAVTRF, and that may be a possibility. We'll have to kind of see what plays out here. Infrastructure funding has been an issue that has received a good bit of attention over the past couple of years. Last year, the governor announced that the so-called Bank of KDOT had been officially closed. For those of you who are not familiar with that term, it applies to transfers that have been made out of the state highway fund or the state transportation plan to support other programs in state government. And there were a few efforts this year to try to claw back into the state highway fund, but most of those were rebuffed. One of the things I did insert here is about a bill that provides some support for airports, which are actually already funded out of the state highway fund. But one thing that is particularly applicable to Wyandotte County that I just want to mention is something that happened last year. The legislature set up a special fund that will aid in local matches for federal projects. And as you know, with the bridges that we have, we've got a number of grant applications that are out right now. And should we get those, there are some dollars that are on the table from the state to help us with the local match that is required in almost all of those expenditures.
Excuse me, sir. We do have a question. Would you rather us hold questions until you finish your presentation, or would you rather us ask the questions dealing with the item?
However you want to do it, it's fine with me. I'm happy.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. My question is, under this support infrastructure funding, the very last sentence, the legislature appropriated 2.3 billion for transportation expenditures. When we say transportation, do we mean infrastructure, or do we possibly mean public transit, or is it all in the same bucket?
Great question. For the most part, it is in the same bucket. Public transit is part of the IKE program, which is the 10-year comprehensive transportation plan, which, by the way, is a over $11 billion fund, but those things are included in the IKE plan.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. If we can quickly just go back to the conversation about the earnings tax. Where does home rule kind of fall within that conversation and in our autonomy?
My understanding, and I'm looking over at legal counsel a little bit here. My understanding is that in order to enact some type of earnings tax, it does require legislative approval, and I think that is outside of home rule authority.
Gotcha.
Agreed.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Well, please continue.
So some really good news about the World Cup. Obviously, everybody is very excited about the World Cup. There were a number of hearings, informational hearings that were provided at the legislature. And in the end, the legislature has authorized $28 million, which is actually an $8 million increase from what Governor Kelly requested in her budget. That's going to be paid out over a 2-year period of time. There certainly was a degree of skepticism about the state putting dollars into that, but I think in the end, we were able to make the case that that these dollars are important, given that we're going to be on the world stage and there's going to be a significant economic impact. One of the requirements that was inserted during the process is that all of these dollars do have to be spent in the state of Kansas. I think that that is a good thing for us. There was some discussion about, well, gee, we could use these dollars to help transport people over to Arrowhead. And we're certainly going to have increased law enforcement costs. We're going to have transportation costs, lots of things. And there's going to be an evolving discussion about how these monies are going to be spent. They're going to be administered by the Department of Commerce. And I think one of the things that we need to do is be pretty diligent in making sure that we outline our priorities for how we'd like to see these dollars spent so we can put them to work for Wyandotte County. In addition to this, I would just want to make you aware that there is also an effort at the federal level to get an appropriation for those cities that are going to be hosting World Cup events. And so there is the possibility that there may be additional federal dollars that may come as well. Under the issue of,
I apologize. I didn't see whose hand was up first. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, Mr. Davis. With regard to the money that will be dispersed in Kansas relative to the World Cup, who beside Wyandotte County might be eligible to receive this? And are there any other limitations on how we spend it other than it has to be directly related to World Cup?
yeah, the Department of Commerce is going to be tasked with coming up with rules and regulations as to how those dollars will be spent. And as I said, I think there's an evolving discussion that needs to occur there, and I think we need to be involved in that discussion. There are projections that there may be other base camps located in Lawrence, perhaps Johnson County, perhaps even Manhattan. And so those locations were also cited.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. Part of my question was already answered with Commissioner Townsend's. So to just clarify, with the funding that has been allocated, as you said, the Commerce is going to be the one to come up with the rules and regulations. But is there any, as you said, as you mentioned, there's other base camps that may be throughout the state on other jurisdictions. How is there a formula they're gonna develop to be able to equitably pass out the funds throughout these throughout the base camps?
That's a very good question, and I think one that nobody really has an answer to right now. I think that once again, we need to be at the forefront of that discussion and trying to lead that discussion so that we can do all we can to make sure that we get our piece of the pie, so to speak, and others are going to want to be involved in that. But I think that given the facilities that we have here, undoubtedly, this is going to be the center of activity in the state of Kansas.
And I would hope so, with us having Children's Mercy Park and then the soccer training facility that we also have out there. So I'm hoping that is true. Thank you.
On the issue of childcare, the governor made a very big push this session to try to consolidate all of the childcare functions that are across state government. There was a study done that ranked Kansas second to last in terms of efficiency and coordination of early childhood programs. And so the governor, with the help of a task force, came up with a proposal to create an Office of Early Childhood Education. That, after a lot of deliberation and modifications to the bill. The bill did pass the House on a 110-10 vote, and is expected to pass the Senate, but it has not passed the Senate yet at this time. Included in that bill are not only the consolidation of those functions across state government, but also a number of updates to child care facility requirements. The effort is being made to try to, I think, make laws a little bit more friendly, and so that more child care facilities can exist, and that more children can be served there. One thing to note here is that the bill does have a prohibition on local governments passing ordinances that are more restrictive than the state standards. So that's something to be cognizant of. The legislature did put some additional dollars into a number of early childhood programs. Many of you are probably familiar with the Tiny K program. That's one of the areas. The governor made a very substantial request, $56 million of additional funds for a number of different childhood education programs. The legislature is still deliberating on that, but there will be there's undoubtedly that's going to be a number that's much less than $56 million. There's also a child care tax credit increase that is part of the bill, Senate Bill 96, and also is contained in the tax plan that the governor proposed just yesterday. In the area of mental health, the legislature provided an additional $13.5 million to make a pilot project that was contained within the Department of Education permanent, and its permanent home will be at KDADS, the Department of Aging and Disability Services. They also increased funding by $5 million for adult inpatient behavioral health services. This is in addition to some pretty significant dollars that were put in with federal ARPA funds to create more inpatient psychiatric beds. Some of those are in Johnson County and some of those are in Sedgwick County. The topic of homelessness and the unhoused, a topic I'm sure all of you are very familiar with and are dealing with on a daily basis here in Wyandotte County. The legislature has spent a good amount of time having what I would say is a healthy and robust discussion about how to address homelessness. And you may not be surprised to know that they're having a hard time finding solutions that they can achieve a consensus on. The governor put $40 million in her budget for a grant program that local units of government could access. Obviously, that's something we're very interested in. There has been a lot of angst among legislators about simply doling out money without having what would probably be classified as enforcement provisions that go along with that. So there was a bill that was advanced in Senate that pared that money back down to $10 million and put a variety of enforcement provisions in it. The House doesn't seem to be terribly interested in that approach, but it is probably going to be coming up here in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for the discussion on that.
Commissioner Lopez? Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. When you say, when the word enforcement is being used, is it enforcement of ensuring the funds are used for unhoused purposes? Or are they wanting enforcement of local governments enforcing our own local laws for the unhoused?
Yes, primarily the latter. Yes, that and Lawrence has been the center of a lot of that discussion because they have had a no camping ordinance that has not been enforced for the past couple of years. They are now beginning to enforce that. But that's where the discussion has really been centered. On the topic of star bonds, as you're aware, the sales tax on food is gradually going away, and with that, that means the ability to pay off star bonds is going to be decreased, and the legislature is discussing replacing those funds with state general fund dollars. That has passed the House, but has not passed the Senate. Probably unlikely to pass the Senate this session, but may get discussed during the next session.
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I'm struggling to understand that a little bit because those grocery stores where the sales tax on groceries isn't being collected or being reduced would have to be within star bond districts for that to matter.
Correct.
So how many grocery stores are there in star bond districts? Because it strikes me that that impact is minimal.
Yeah, it was discussed that there was not a significant fiscal impact to that, but there is an impact out there. There are grocery stores located in star bond districts, and some of you may think offhand of whether there are here in Wyandotte
I
County.
don't think we have one. Target? So is Walmart currently within a star bond district, or is that a proposed expansion? We've already expanded star bonds over across the street to Walmart.
The plaza area is included in a state star bond that was created in 2016. At that time, we chose not to participate as a UG government, but we chose to develop that area through a sales tax TIF
Right.
project. So, but it currently does reside in a star bond district.
Yes, yes, thank you.
But the target is not, because that's directly across the street. It's not in that star bond, but it might be in the Legends area. So that whole part of our community is inundated with CIDs and
Mhm.
star bonds.
Any sales tax generated by any unit within a star bonds district goes to retire the debt of star bonds. And the thing about the grocery stores, even though there may be few, it will have a fiscal impact on the payout of the star bonds to the bondholders. So if the state makes up that difference, it doesn't put ours at risk. The good thing is it's been slowly going away. So if anything, it might extend out a year on a star bonds project that it could have, depending on the amount of revenue the star bonds has committed to the project, could determine how much revenue we will lose in paying it off early. So, I mean,
And pro tem to that, so the bill, a bill that would replace lost revenue with state general fund dollars, would all be at the state level, right?
yeah, I would assume that the revenue that is lost, measurable loss by the Department of Revenue, that the state would write a check to, I'm hypothetically thinking it would be the bondholder for the shortness of the revenue that wasn't generated by us.
Got it.
In any sales tax reduction, if the state's going to pick it up for grocery sales, and I don't know if it's Aldi's, Target, JCPenney, however they look at those sales, because some of these small stores have consumables that are market driven for food. So I can't tell you what the fiscal impact would be, but the state would make that difference up on our end.
And then just to circle back around to the Walmart though, as Administrator Johnston said, county and city are not participating in that star bond. So that would only be the state's portion of that sales tax revenue being diverted to the star bonds. I'm sorry, I don't mean to drag it out, but this is interesting to me.
Mr. Administrator, you want to answer that question or comment on that?
Well, the answer right now is we're not participating in that star bond. There are actually no star bonds that have been issued for that district. That's part of the American Royal Star Bond District, and it goes from the Plaza Caddy Corner at Hutton and 110th to that property, and then winds its way around State Avenue to where American Royal is being built now. And I know there has been discussions about a star bond for that project, but nothing to report right now.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is very interesting because at some point, everybody, if you're fortunate enough, is going to buy some groceries. So basic question number one, because I'm sure our, constituents may think that wherever they go, at some point in the future, they won't have to pay sales tax on food. So question number one, when does the elimination of the sales tax on food kick in? Do we have a date?
Well, we've seen, it's a 3-year phase down, and so year one has occurred. Most of these tax plans that have been debated have a component that would accelerate the last year and have it entirely eliminated here on July 1 of 2024. I think where you were also maybe going with this is what is the extent of, is it food, groceries? Really just extends to groceries. There was a debate about whether it extended to food. If you go to whatever restaurant and you don't have to pay sales tax on food or other items that would be purchased somewhere where it's a non-grocery store, but this is really just applies only to groceries.
Okay, so I'm at the Merck on July the 5th of this year. Should I expect to see a sales tax or not on my bill?
If some plan that is some semblance of what's been debated here passes, I think it's unlikely that you're going to see a state sales tax also, but that there will still be a local sales tax on groceries.
Okay, so there'll be what sales tax that we're still likely to see at, say, July 5th? Local sales tax, but not,
But not state.
and it doesn't matter that you're not in a star bond district.
Right.
Thank you.
Actually, there's already been a minor reduction already.
I thought there had been, but when we get to whatever the zero will be, whenever that is, so.
Yeah, the first step has already occurred, and the second one is to occur on July 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I remember maybe next year, the state sales tax will go to a 0 or it'll be 2026. Because I remember it was 4, they were going to drop it down to 4, 2, and then 0. So I believe July 1st of this year, they'll drop it down to 2. And then if history repeats itself, next year, July 1st, 2026 is when it'll drop down to 0, if I remember correctly. My question, and it might not be a question that can be answered because it's just going to be depending on each district or each bond area. Has the Department of Revenue estimated how much of a decrease of revenue there may be in the star bonds?
Yes, and I can't recall the exact figure, but it was a couple $1 million. I think it was not real significant amount.
Okay, thank you.
Whenever you say star bonds, discussion ensues, I know. So on to expedited partner therapy. If you are not aware what expedited partner therapy is, it is, because I was not until I got involved with this issue here. It is when someone tests positive for a sexually transmitted disease, and it gives a medical provider or health department the ability to provide treatment to that person's partner without having to see that person. We are one of 5 states that does not have an expedited partner therapy law. I want to give hats off to our health department that really took the lead in trying to put together a coalition of groups to advocate for this. They did a really great job at the hearings that were held in the House and the Senate. We got a bill out of the House, didn't quite get it out of the Senate, and we ran into the turnaround deadline, and was not able to get Commissioner Burrows will know I'm trying to use too much insider jargon, but we were not able to get the bill blessed, which means it stays alive outside of the turnaround deadline. But one thing I do just want to highlight with regard to this issue, and we've had a number of follow-up discussions with the health department, is post-pandemic, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but public health has got some real challenges post-pandemic. There's certainly a lot of legislators over there that their opinions about public health departments and just public health in general has changed as a result of the pandemic. And I think public health departments have got a lot of work to do to be able to address those challenges that are definitely there. On public school funding, that is one of the meatier issues that is still going to be debated during the wrap-up session. The legislature has not arrived at an education funding bill. The discussion around special education funding has been the primary sticking point. There is bipartisan agreement that there should be enhanced funding for special education, but there are some disagreements about exactly how the funding formula for special education should work. And there have been some efforts to try to rework how that funding formula is structured, and that's going to be discussed during the wrap-up session. I also noted here that there was a bill passed that's called the Blueprint for Literacy, which has been a project that the Board of Regents, in collaboration with the State Department of Education, have been working on, that is going to really try to focus efforts on reading proficiency and trying to improve that in our K through 12 schools. And that bill was just signed by Governor Kelly the other day. The issue of a riverfront authority or port authority, that has been a plank in the UG's legislative platform, and Senator Haley introduced what's actually a resolution and not a bill that would allow the UG to create a port authority should you want to do that at any time in the future. Lavert Murray gave me a great education about the history of port authorities in Wyandotte County because he's pretty much lived it. But that bill that resolution has passed the Senate, and Senator Haley is looking for a vehicle to try to get that into a conference committee so that it can get onto the governor's desk. Community college funding. There's some very good news for community colleges, some pretty significant increases in funding, almost $16 million for student success initiatives at community and technical colleges, and also additional $5 million for their capital outlay fund. The issue of public employees and assaults on public employees. House Bill 2808 was introduced this past session, and that bill actually had a hearing and came out of the House Federal and State Affairs Committee. It is sitting on the calendar in the House and probably is not going to be acted upon, but it would create a crime, specific crime for someone who assaulted or battered a public transit official. And DSRA Bush did an absolutely tremendous job in testifying on that bill, and was very, very helpful to the committee members that heard that testimony. Another lively talk, I'm sure, is medical marijuana and cannabis. The legislature, as they have for the past several years, has struggled to try to see if they could find some consensus on this issue. As I've mentioned before, the Senate president is not a fan of medical marijuana. He did give some blessing to a pretty limited bill that actually just created a pilot project that was introduced late in the session, but then the rug got pulled out from under that bill. So the issue is still ongoing. There will be an effort, much like Medicaid expansion, to pull a bill out of committee and to bring it onto the Senate floor. Senator Rob Olson, who is retiring, has been a longstanding advocate for medical marijuana, and he is leading the charge on that. That will be interesting to see what happens if a bill can get onto the Senate floor there. For those of you who are interested in the issue of going beyond medical marijuana to recreational, there was an amendment that was offered to just completely remove marijuana as a scheduled substance, and that failed on a vote of 41 to 80. I don't think that that's necessarily indicative of the support that's there. As Commissioner Burrows knows, sometimes amendments fail for various reasons and become partisan for various reasons. And so I think there's probably more support out there than 41 votes. There's a Good Samaritan law bill that is working its way through the process. It has passed the House unanimously, and is waiting action in the Senate, and I expect that it will be acted upon, that provides immunity from prosecution for certain drug crimes when individuals seek medical assistance related to the use of a controlled substance. Most of this related to fentanyl. Our health department has been involved in that effort. Pretty broad support for that. A couple of other issues I just wanted to highlight here that are not necessarily on the agenda, but I think are issues that are of interest to the UG and local governments in general. The city of Lawrence passed a plastic bag ban, and that has triggered several efforts. They have debated that issue over the past couple of years, but they actually passed it this year. And Governor Kelly has vetoed legislation that would prohibit local governments from regulating plastic grocery bags and other related material. Given the vote, 24 votes in the Senate, 72 in the House, it does not look like there are enough votes to override that veto. So that's going to, local governments will continue to have the authority to do that. In some economic development incentives for data centers. Reason I put this on here is we have, I think, reason to believe that some of the folks that are interested in this bill are very interested in Wyandotte County. Committees in both the House and the Senate did advance a package of economic development incentives that mostly relate to exemptions from state and local taxes for large data centers. There are requirements in terms of the number of jobs and the amount of capital investment that they have to bring. Missouri, Iowa, and Nebraska already have laws on the books. This really kind of got caught up in the larger tax discussion, and legislative leadership has indicated that they want to hit the pause button on this issue, but return to it next year. So I would look for this to be an issue that's discussed next session. There was a robust debate about home-based businesses and city and county abilities to regulate home-based businesses. This came from a Johnson County legislator who really wanted to remove the ability of local government to regulate home-based businesses. That bill ended up not going very far after most cities and counties had stated their opposition to that. Vacant property registry, as you're probably aware, we have a vacant property registry here. There have been efforts to try to preempt the ability of cities and counties to have vacant property registries. We have had some pretty good sword fights over that over the past couple of years, and we did not have that fight this year. So that was nice to not have to fight that battle. You've probably followed what's been going on in Prairie Village. There were several Prairie Village bills that came before the legislature, and a lot of Prairie Village residents that came up to the legislature. One of their bills would create essentially an initiative process whereby citizens could enact laws. And the legislature, I think, at the end of the day, just felt like this was a Prairie Village problem and not something that required state legislation. Some very good news for the KU Medical Center. The legislature appropriated $75 million, which may be the largest single appropriation that I've seen for something like this. For the cancer research facility at KU Med, this is going to be in addition to the significant appropriation that Senator Moran got for this project, and then also some matching private dollars. So very good news for KU Med. The issue of civil asset forfeiture, this has been around the legislature for a long time. Actually, I worked on this issue in a previous life before I was even in the legislature. And an interesting thing kind of happened this session. The forces came together, and there were enough legislators that really felt that there needed to be some significant reform of civil asset forfeiture. And so the House and the Senate both passed bills and were able to marry those together. And there were a lot of law enforcement concerns. Some of those concerns were satisfied and some were not, but there are going to be some significant changes related to that. State employee pay, I just put this on here because I think it's always helpful, especially as an employer of the UG, to just know what's going on with state employees. Significant dollars put into some pay increases for state employees. They're going to get between a 2.5 and a 5% pay increase. A lot of that is based upon surveys about whether they are under market or over market pay positions. And lastly, Open Records, the Kansas Policy Institute, which is an institute that is in Wichita that makes a lot of open records requests, came to the legislature with trying to change the costs that they would have to bear in terms of open records request. There was pretty unanimous opposition to that from all government entities, and Angela provided some good information on that, and that bill was defeated as well. So those are all the issues that I put out here, and there's many others, but would be happy to entertain any other questions that anybody has or comments.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. My question is pertaining to the last topic, and it's to our acting chief counsel. What for our unit of government and people, when they ask for open records requests, what is the cost to citizens for open records requests?
It is the actual cost to produce the records. So there's no markup.
There's no set number. It's just however large the request or job is. Is that correct?
Right. And they're provided that information ahead of time. And then sometimes if they've done a very broad search, and they obviously will comply if that's what they want, but if they want to narrow it down so as not to expend so much, we let them know that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I may have missed this, or at least it's not on here. There's been a lot of conversation that I'm sure we've all have had them with constituents regarding property taxes. We see our neighbors from across the river where they've passed a bill that allows the freezing of property taxes for seniors. Mr. Davis, were there any conversations about property taxes and particularly for seniors and what can be done?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because, yes, there have been, a lot of conversations about property taxes. There've been discussions about, a constitutional amendment that would, limit, valuation increases to, certain, percentages. There was a program, I think that, many of you are aware of, that was passed, couple of years ago that gives some breaks to seniors that are in certain income categories, but there have been discussions about broadening that. There was a discussion this year about disabled veterans and carving out some property tax issues with regard to disabled veterans, which brings in a whole host of constitutional issues because of the constitutional requirement that there be equal application of taxes. So what I would say, I think overall about that is that, that I think that discussion is going to be more robust next session. It probably didn't get as much attention this session, mainly because of the issues related to the income tax reduction and the flat tax proposal.
Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. It's kind of a follow-up to the question Commissioner Davis just asked. Were there any discussions regardless of age or any other factor like that? If you were just paying property tax, were there any discussions about limiting potential increases on appraised values or the amount that would dictate, because I know that comes from the state, what somebody pays? We have held the mill rate constant for years, but as the valuations go up, that's where these huge increases are coming from. Was there any discussion that might give us some leeway or hope for reduction based on assessed values?
Yes, there has been a discussion about that. Senator Tyson, who chairs the Senate Tax Committee, I believe, has proposed a 4% cap, with certain exceptions. And I look for a lot more discussion about that. I think this, provided that the legislature and the governor finally arrive at some place with regards to the income tax issues, I think next session is likely to be dominated by property tax discussions.
Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Davis, thank you for this report. I just have a quick question around funding for the unhoused. Do you suspect that they will bring that back up next session?
I think that's a possibility, yes. I do think that there still could be some action on it this session. Today at all the city and county lobbyists meet on Thursdays, and today there was some discussion about Senator Clay's, who has been involved in this issue, may try to push this forward in the budget conference committee, and so there still could be action on that. I don't know whether the governor will want to put dollars in her budget again if the legislature doesn't take action this session, but there has been significant interest. Wichita and Sedgwick County really kind of started this discussion. We actually signed on to their letter to the governor asking for funding for a grant program. And so I think that this is going to be kept on the front burner. And I think, as all of you know, the issue of homelessness and the unhoused is not going to be going away anytime soon here, unfortunately.
Okay. Seeing no further questions or comments, Paul, thank you for your presentation. It's thorough as always, and I do appreciate the notes to read along with your overview. Very good synopsis as to what happened this session. Thanks for your work on behalf of the unified government and reporting back to us. Seeing no further action, I would state that I will adjourn this meeting. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Townsend, second.
Do we have a motion to adjourn and a second? Clerk, please call roll.
Roll call, Hill,
Aye.
Lopez,
Aye.
Height, Davis,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned, but we will convene in the commission chambers. About 7:10 staff, about 7:10 for our planning and zoning regular commission meeting tonight. Thank you, committee.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the questions. Good.